There's always some works that video game developers have accomplished that have an instant classic feel to them, sometimes seeming thematically perfect or familiar even. The game industry has always tried to shoot for a more cinematic theme or presentation from the beginning. That tonal standard in itself is derivative, but these games I'm going to talk about are very much inspired or copied straight from certain movies, some having their entire foundation from an outline of a movie that came out 10 or 20 years ago. Of course, there is going to be a lot of spoilers from movies and video games. You were warned. One of the game industry's most well-known and still relevant franchises, God of War, started off as a passion project in 2005 by Cory Barlog and David Jaffe. Both were responsible to create a successful hack-and-slash action-adventure game exclusively for PlayStation 2. There's no doubt the original premise for the first game had notable similarities to the 1981 film Clash of the Titans. The general outline to Clash of the Titans goes like this. A demigod named Perseus, son of Zeus, was of course abandoned by his father and raised by humans. One day he's called by Zeus to free a woman named Andromeda from a curse, as well as to marry her. Along the way, Perseus receives weapons and powers from Zeus to use against Greek mythology monsters. Just like how in God of War, Kratos would receive weapons and powers from Zeus and other gods alike. Sometimes Kratos would forge and happen across a new weapon, and Perseus is also known for this, by using Medusa's own head to defeat a kraken by the end of the movie. In God of War, Kratos also makes the same decision. Perseus's abilities were used to serve Zeus, as was Kratos. By the end of Clash of the Titans, Zeus forbade the other gods from touching Perseus, leaving him in peace, opposed to how Kratos killed every god in his way, eventually ridding himself of any burden. Greek mythology can all be the same, but with the premise of Perseus being Zeus's son, using Medusa's head, and eventually being pardoned from all the gods, with that order in which everything happened, the story of Kratos and Perseus, or at least their outline, feels very familiar. You can tell the developers of God of War were not only inspired by Greek mythology, but one of the most famous classic movies, Clash of the Titans. There was a time when everybody wanted a God of War movie after the game came out, but for some reason Hollywood decided to make a Clash of the Titans remake. I went to go see it, of course, because I'm a God of War fan. It's better than nothing. Well, that remake wasn't all that good to begin with, but the second one wasn't bad though. We actually get to see a Titan at the end. Moving on. So in 2010, developers Quantic Dream worked tirelessly on an exclusive franchise for PlayStation 3 called Heavy Rain. Its themes mostly consisted of kidnap, victims, and decision-based drama. In 1997, there was a film called Ransom, and in it, the main character Tom Mullen, played by Mel Gibson, is someone with the entire world's attention, some for good and negative reasons, and he's known to have a lot of money, unrightfully so. While he was attending a celebration with his wife and son, Sean, Tom starts a conversation with business partners, letting his son do whatever he wanted. So his son, Sean, goes off to play with his toy plane with 2 balloons attached to it. After Tom's wife notices their son is gone and notifies Tom, the first thing he noticed was the plane and the balloons attached to it. Tom frantically starts looking around for his son. He starts yelling Sean's name over and over again. He had no choice but to follow where the plane and balloons were heading, to no avail since the plane and balloons wind up at a dead end. Tom runs to the street to pick up the broken plane and yells his son's name one last time. Besides that scene, everything about this movie's theme could resemble any other kidnapping movie, with a ransom negotiation and search parties, but that specific scene from the movie was almost exactly copied in Heavy Rain's opening sequence, even down to his son's name, which was flipped around since Heavy Rain's main character, Ethan, has 2 sons, one named Jason and the other Sean, which were both lost. The developers at Quantic Dream surely weren't only inspired by it, they took a lot of notes. Towards the middle and end of Ransom, the father takes justice into his own hands and is met with choices that define him in a very public and blunt way. The choices in the movie affected his standing greatly and were magnified by his public announcements on the news. Heavy Rain also had a dad that would do anything for his son and was also met with choices that greatly affected his world, but everything outside of that opening sequence could have just been inspired. The craziest thing is, I just stumbled on this movie, and over time of playing Heavy Rain, it seems like the developer's references was seemingly unrecognized, since I haven't heard anything about its inspirations, so I guess they got away with this one. Another game that was notably inspired by a movie, in this case a popular one, was Grand Theft Auto Vice City. GTA has taken many identities over the years, all associated with crime. In GTA Vice City, specifically, Tommy Vercetti travels from Liberty City to Vice City, which in reality is Florida, and eventually becomes a crime lord with his own empire. This could remind some people of Scarface's general outline, Tony Montana coming from Cuba to eventually become a crime or drug lord in Miami, Florida. But not only that, a lot of tones and even scenes were taken from Scarface, like the mansion you eventually own, having that iconic twin staircase in the entrance, which is featured in a lot of scenes in Scarface, and during the most famous famous one, with Scarface's last stand at the end, with Tony Montana being seemingly invincible and shooting up everybody. Both game and movie stories also took place chronologically close to each other, Vice City taking place in 1986 and Scarface in 1983. But Grand Theft Auto Vice City wasn't the only Grand Theft Auto inspired by a movie. A lot of GTA 5 felt like something straight out of the 1995 movie Heat, with its heist scenes being over the top, but with the inclusion of cars. On top of the organized crime sequences, Grand Theft Auto 5 more closely resembled Fast and Furious, especially with the inclusion of having the ability to customize cars to the point of absurdity. Since the first movie, The Fast and the Furious, there's always been either a duo or entourage of characters helping each other complete extravagant heists. With its recent iteration, extravagant is an understatement. But starting out, Fast and the Furious has always been an over-the-top crime and action movie, fueled with a lot of racing and car scenes. And of course, GTA 5 is known for the cars. But the entourage of characters in 5 felt like something well put together. Its iconic multiple main character feel came from the Hollywood depiction of badass and highly dangerous individuals from any ongoing franchise that I can think about, seems to specifically be inspired by Fast and the Furious. In GTA 5 and Fast and the Furious, you got the hacker, the getaway driver, and the gunman. Other movies have done it, but didn't quite make each and every one of those members as iconic and ridiculously badass as was shown in the Fast and the Furious franchise. Rockstar is another one that took notes, but they made their characters a bit more grounded and normal looking, that's for sure. Out of any of these games on the list, or any video game franchise in history, the Metal Gear franchise takes the cake when it comes to taking ideas from Hollywood. The director of Metal Gear, Hideo Kojima, the aspiring film director turned into video game director, has somewhat of an addiction to the American film culture. He's been watching them his entire life, and one day he decided to make Metal Gear for the MSX, which was well received and an instant classic. The original Metal Gear carried over a lot of elements from a specific movie called Escape from New York. Metal Gear's premise was simple. A character codenamed Solid Snake was given a mission, Operation Intrude N313, and was sent to infiltrate Outer Heaven to rescue an agent codenamed Fox, one of Foxhound's most highly regarded agents. Solid Snake was accompanied by a character named Big Boss, a bearded old man with an eye patch. And from Escape from New York, the main character's name was Snake Plissken, which was sent to infiltrate an island that the Air Force One plane crashed at to rescue the President of the United States. A pretty important guy. And similar to Metal Gear, Snake Plissken had an eye patch like Big Boss and shared the same name as Solid Snake. Later on, Metal Gear Solid 2 referenced this by calling Solid Snake Plissken. A while after Metal Gear for MSX came out, of course word and rumors got out, and for Metal Gear's PlayStation sequel, Metal Gear Solid, Hideo decided he wanted Solid Snake to have a raspy voice to go along with his name. And coincidentally, Snake Plissken also has a raspy voice. Solid Snake is known for his smart remarks, attitude, and just being a plain badass. Snake Plissken also has an attitude and a whole lot of combat experience. Though a lot of other elements from Metal Gear Solid's story branched off to other original paths, the main path and foundation that Metal Gear was made out of came from Escape from New York and the character Snake Plissken. In a way, he's the original Big Boss. Hideo even stated he asked for permission to use the name and likeness of Snake Plissken from the director of Escape from New York himself before making the characters. Since Metal Gear was a stealth action game, Hideo Kojima was generally inspired by Escape from New York, which was released in 1981, opposed to Metal Gear for the MSX being released in 1987. So if anybody thought these games were completely original and being made by complete geniuses, sorry for breaking your reality. And if you're wondering why Heavy Rain was so much better than Beyond Two Souls and Fahrenheit, it's because like every great movie, series, or even video game, they all need a strong foundation. And those inspirations they got from movies served as a great foundation to come up with even better ideas. And most likely these developers all looked for permission. At the end of the day, art inspires life and vice versa. And if you know of any video games that seem to be directly inspired by movies, let everybody know in the comments. And thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. Later.
Sean! Sean! Sean!